We're now joined by Katie Zacharia of the Golden State of California. She's an attorney, a political strategist, and a senior advisor to Fix California. This is a big news week, Katie, and we have a situation right now of James Comey and John Brennan. Will they finally face justice for Crossfire Hurricane and the Russia hoax that seemed to take down a duly elected president, Donald Trump, in his first term?
Right. It's so upsetting to remember 2016 and to remember these people coming after the president and really taking a sledgehammer to his knees in his first year and trying to undermine everything that he did. And he still rose up. He still delivered the greatest economy we'd seen in history for the U.S., but they should be punished. They need to be investigated, and they deserve this. And I'm so grateful that we have Director Kash Patel to be able to deliver for the president results. But results, it's justice. It's delivering him justice, because I'm sure you very clearly remember Fusion GPS, Hillary Clinton, Steele dossier, Crossfire Hurricane, and then what happened? Nothing ever ended up happening with that. And the president recently declassified Crossfire Hurricane, which I think works very well and in tandem with this investigation into Comey and Brennan.
And do you think there's any correlation between what's happening there and the Epstein files? Because we're really watching this as it develops, and we love that President Trump has put these great servant leaders into place, whether it's AG Pam Bondi, to your point, FBI Director Kash Patel, his deputy, Dan Bongino, who have worked so hard to find a solution and find the truth in all of this. But it seems this week that things might have changed, or there might be a turn over at the Department of Justice. Not saying that there's a cover-up by any means, but that more has to be investigated. It just seems as the years go on, and even the weeks and months, 6 months in this administration, they're doing amazing work, but it all seems to point back to Barack Hussein Obama, the auto pen, and everything the bureaucrats did over the course of the last several years.
Pointing back to the auto pen, pointing back to the last 4 years, the last 4 disastrous years under Joe Biden, and what President Trump is now having to completely correct in these 6 months, a historic breakneck speed. We could never have seen what President Trump has even accomplished in the last 2 weeks be accomplished by either Barack Hussein Obama or Joe Biden. And I really do trust, in regard to your question on the Epstein files, I do trust President Trump implicitly, and I trust his leadership. And if there is a sniff or smell of impropriety, or needs to be an investigation or further conversation about this, I believe that he will do it. He'll direct his DOJ, he'll direct his FBI to do it. I think Kash Patel is incredible. He has a voracious appetite for uncovering the truth. So, and I know he's getting a lot of flack online. I've seen this, you've seen this. I do think Kash is the same person Kash has always been. And if it quacks like a duck, looks like a duck, is it a duck? He's there to tell us whether it's a duck. I trust them. I also trust this investigation into Comey and Brennan. I want the truth on this, and I want justice for President Trump.
And I can't imagine the pressure of their jobs. We have some pressure here in the media, but we're just trying to uncover the truth regardless of where that leads. And we're committed here on the right side of history to be the voice for the voiceless, and to find wherever that does uncover those insidious rocks that seem to be, covering up the muck and the cockroaches, if you will, that seek to do harm to people, and the evil that sadly can exist in this world. Now, if we can turn a little bit to your expertise as an attorney, we've seen that the Supreme Court very clear on these lower court judges trying to usurp the executive authority of Article 2 per the executive authority of the President of the United States. As dating back to that joint session of Congress, President Trump had stated all that mattered was it wasn't more legislation, It wasn't more just going and putting on press conferences and kicking the can down the road. We know both Republican and Democrat administrations had done that for years, especially the Congress when it came to illegal immigration. But all you needed to do was change the president. But here's the problem. We still have federal courts attempting to halt President Trump's efforts to restrict birthright citizenship and really just let him lead on this issue. So how do you see this all unfolding over the course of the next several years?
Well, Amy Coney Barrett, ACB, did an incredible job on that opinion. And what she gave President Trump and what the majority of the court gave President Trump was not just a victory, it was a nationwide mandate. This is a landslide. This is a historic, not a landslide victory. It was President Trump's landslide victory. This is a historic landmark case for the Supreme Court, meaning it set a precedent. You cannot, as a judge, you cannot issue a nationwide injunction on the details of the case before you. It is just specific to the case before you, the plaintiff before you. And so for President Trump, this is amazing. And this is exactly what needed to happen, because the precedent that had been set was not the intent of the originalists in the writing and drafting the Constitution, the Articles of Separation. No judge, no federal district court judge should ever be able to override presidential authority on a nationwide mandate. And so you have the district courts, you have the circuit courts, and then you have the Supreme Court at the federal level. And even the Supreme Court realized that this slippery slope of allowing these district court judges to usurp the authority of the president is extraordinarily dangerous, not just for President Trump, but for any president and for any executive branch versus judicial branch authority. So that in addition to her conversation about the dissenting opinion of Justice Jackson was some of my favorite modern written conversation, essentially saying that Justice Jackson was not even within the bounds of the Constitution, and there were no principles to support her idea that judicial authority could exist as a nationwide mandate. So a beautiful opinion, a nice majority from the court.
And it almost harkens back to the marriage ruling between the arguments of then Justice Kennedy, then Justice Scalia, where Justice Scalia was saying, what the hell are we doing, in essence? I mean, very much more articulate than what I just laid out there, but we're ruling on things that should have never been determined, especially socially and civilly, and especially those things that the states and localities, per the 10th Amendment and federalism, actually get to determine with states' rights. So you have a situation there that's very interesting to look as it continues to develop with the court. Even reading Federalist 80, I found it amazing that Alexander Hamilton, back in 1788, someone who wanted a strong centralized government in Washington, D.C., although these were three co-equal branches of governments in Article 1, 2, and 3, it was very clear what the founders had set out to do, that these courts were not supposed to be super legislatures. And now we've seen that really in the post-World War II era. So it's great getting your professional expertise as an attorney on all of these matters. Now let's look at your golden state of California, because we've had a couple of wild issues happening. We've had President Trump sending in the National Guard because we know your current governor just will not protect people. We know Mayor Bass is spreading so much fear-mongering and conspiracy theories out there that people are on the streets of Los Angeles pointing guns, federal authorities, at the citizens of Los Angeles. Can you set the record straight for us? And why did the failed leadership of Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom, why has it caused so many people to leave the beautiful Golden State?
Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom are the creators of the violent rhetoric that's happening against ICE. People are upset because they are being given permission by the mayor of their city, by the governor of their state, to be outraged at sanctuary cities actually being regulated by the federal government. First of all, sanctuary cities are illegal. They are the Democrats' beautiful, nice term of an insurrection. They are saying we are going to pick and choose which laws we want to follow as a state, and then we're going to decide not to follow federal immigration laws. What ICE is doing, what Tom Homan is doing, what President Trump is doing is enforcing the federal immigration laws of this nation. Sanctuary states and cities should have never existed in the first place. So what we've seen with Gavin Newsom, who's now campaigning for himself in South Carolina, and Mayor Bass, who was in Ghana while her city burned down to the tune of $250 billion, is that they are more interested in political grandstanding, making a podcast, writing a Substack, or promoting violent rhetoric against the president rather than actually running their city. So people are leaving, not because California isn't an amazing, beautiful state, but because these elected officials do not work on behalf of American citizens. They are working on behalf of violent, criminal, illegal aliens, and they are working on behalf of rioters. They are working on behalf of unrest and criminals. In California, just recently, there had to be a ballot initiative which the voters voted in to say you can't rob a store and get away with it for an amount of $1,000 or under. People were robbing all of these high-end stores at about $1,000, robbing up to $950 and not being held accountable. This is enabling criminals to commit crimes. And so we do not have a governor who's interested in law and order. We don't have a mayor who's interested in law and order. And American citizens suffer because of it.
And we saw him sweating like he was guilty of something in the Palmetto State of South Carolina. But my condolences to Governor Newsom. I know it's very humid there this time of year, but it's interesting how he wants a promotion, as you stated, Katie, although he can't really get the financial house in order of California, nor can he provide for the safety. And let's play devil's advocate for a moment. Is there something beneficial to have illegal immigration in the state? Because both leaders have claimed that, oh, no one else is going to go on the pistachio farms. No one else wants to work the fields in California. Such natural, abundant resources coming from your beautiful state. But in addition to that, we find that this with the sanctuary, it's Tren de Aragua, it's MS-13. It's not the best people, it's the worst who have thrived there. So is it really counterintuitive that they make such a grandstanding and such a claim that Americans don't want specific jobs, but rather it would go to people who are of illegal status?
It's offensive to those who have immigrated legally and have worked very hard to get legal jobs. And it's not just the pistachio farms that are hiring illegal immigrants, they're hiring legal immigrants. And for those people, again, that went through the process, there is a reason why President Trump was in near parity to Kamala Harris among Hispanic voters. He basically took the Hispanic vote from her almost entirely. We were at like a 48%, 50%. I mean, this was a historic margin that the Republicans did. Why? President Trump didn't change his policies at all. He's been talking about enforcing immigration since 2013, since 2014. If you go back to his Twitter, you can see him talking about this. This is nothing new under the sun. And he has been more popular among immigrants, among legal immigrants, than any other president in history. We had the Arab vote in Dearborn, Michigan, flipped an entire district for President Trump. This is the only Arab majority county in the United States, and it flipped for President Trump. And then he went on huge increase among Black voters, huge increase among Hispanic voters and Asian voters. So this kind of rhetoric that, oh, these people are going to suffer if we don't allow illegal immigrants. I'm sorry to say that actually the California citizens again suffered because Gavin Newsom gave our Medi-Cal benefits, which is our statewide health insurance, he gave that carte blanche to any illegal immigrant who came over. So he gave them free health care at the expense of the American and California taxpayer. And so these policies, again, are detrimental to legal immigrants who should be celebrated, who should be rewarded for going through the proper channels and proper process, and those tax-paying California citizens. So it's rhetoric. And it quite frankly is part of why there is this disruption and all these riots down in the city and in the sanctuary cities.
Perhaps it was the greatest irony of all the 2024 campaign that Detroit, Michigan, the surrounding area, many of those Democrat mayors in the Arab sections of the suburbs going for President Trump, endorsing him, saying that we don't agree on everything, but we know our family in the Middle East, regardless of where you are on the issue, will be safer under the peace through strength candidate. And I'm starting to think now myself that Governor Shapiro of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania actually might have distanced himself as he was being vetted for that VP slot, because I couldn't think of anything in the world as to why you would pick the Minnesota governor who just claims that he's somewhat of a goofball sometimes, even though he's admitted to lying on a regular basis.
Well, and was declaring that tampons should be in boys' bathrooms. That's why he got his nickname. And yes, people distance themselves from the Democrat Party because they are in an identity crisis. You saw likely today, John Kerry came out and said, "Oh, the Democrats' policies of the border had us, we're a border siege. Like, this is terrible. President Trump was right." Well, I'm sorry, John Kerry. You should have said that 4 years ago when Joe Biden was running against President Trump, and President Trump was saying to him at the time, if you do not secure our borders, it is going to be a national crisis. And here we are 4 or 5 years later in a crisis of deportation and illegal immigration that President Trump is having to fix. And at the cost and expense, again, of tax-paying citizens. There was a huge earmark in the One Big Beautiful Bill for this. So for deportation and for ICE. So all these flip-floppers, John Kerry being the chief flip-flopper, it's so tiring to hear them because they could have done these policies 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and spoken out against Joe Biden, spoken out against Kamala Harris.
And the 50-state solution of positive populism seems to be some hope down the road for the golden state of California, once truly the greatest middle-class tax haven in the country. I mean, it's hard to believe that it once elected Richard Nixon and the great Ronald Reagan, of all people, with their conservative credit and receipts, with those two great leaders. But what's on the forefront now? 2026, we have a midterm coming up with President Trump not at the top of the ballot, but MAGA still really pushing for this big tent solution to so many various problems, especially illegal immigration, as we've been touching on today. So it looks like you might have the former vice president jumping into Democratic ranks, and they seem to be a little bit nervous about that. How about on the Republican side? We have Steve Hilton, who is from the UK originally, but has immigrated to the United States, and he can't take it anymore. He's fighting back, and he's doing so articulately. How do you see this race going down? And is there really a chance for a Republican chief executive to take command in the Golden State?
Well, we should all be reminded of the fact that Kamala Harris won every single state that does not require voter ID. This is a problem that is symptomatic in New York City, where we have this radical Mamdani going as the candidate for the Democrat Party. And now in California, we have these radical leftist mayors like Karen Bass, who actually ran against Rick Caruso, who is more of a moderate Democrat. And of course she won, but they're winning because there's no proof of citizenship requirement. There's no voter ID. President Trump came right out of the hatch outside of border patrol, border regulation, border security, and deportations. He also said we have to secure our elections. Now, he signed an executive order on this, on voter ID, proof of citizenship. Speaker Johnson has the SAVE Act in the House, and I think I sent it on to the Senate, and we're waiting on confirmation on that. But I will say this, and I will say it on repeat. We cannot win an election in California. We as Republicans, we as conservatives, common sense people cannot win an election in California until we have voter ID. That is the only thing that is going to make a difference in California's elections. And it cannot just be on a federal level, because the SAVE Act is protecting House seats, it's protecting federal Senate seats. But we have to have our own statewide ballot initiative. It's an 80-20 issue. If that issue gets on the ballot, we win. We win in California on voter ID. And once you have voter ID, you push back the ballot harvesting, you push back the fraud, you push back the illegal immigrants being able to vote, and you really secure the election. And this is something that has to be done nationwide, state by state. So as much as I get excited about certain candidates, Kamala Harris would actually be a gift for California, because people really have a strong distaste for her in her home state. And we cannot win unless we have voter ID, period, the end.
And it's a phenomenon that you have, to President Trump's point, that he was really highlighting this in the 2024 campaign, and rightfully so. He wins 31 states with voter ID, to your point, Katie, and 19 states without voter ID. Now we have Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Okay, they're very liberal, about 2 to 3 Democrat or blue. But even states like the Garden State of New Jersey, the Prairie State of Illinois, those numbers are pretty darn close towards late into the evening, early morning hours. And maybe if there was a form of voter ID, you'd have some more transparency. But this is something that really cuts across all ideological spectrums. The American people want free and fair elections. I think it's pretty simple.
Yes, and you're protecting it for American citizens. No other country in the world that takes their elections seriously doesn't require voter ID. The fact that the left has politicized this issue is ridiculous. This should be a bipartisan issue that you have to show an ID, proof of citizenship, in order to participate in our election. Think about how hard our founding fathers worked to have a free, fair country. And here we are 249 years later or 48 years later deciding that people don't have to show that they live in this country to vote here, that they're citizens. The idea of that, the idea that the Democrats don't want this only shows that they care about self-preservation, and the self-preservation is that New York is the exact example, and Stephen Miller has talked about this, that what happened in this election is really a symptom of the fact that there is unregulated migration. 1/3 of all adults that live in New York are foreign born. 2/3 of the kids that are living in households are foreign born in New York City. This has to be regulated. There has to be, you can be foreign born, but are you a registered citizen? In order to vote in our elections, you have to be. And that is how you secure it. And I think that's how you even beat Mandami.
Katie Zacharia, attorney and senior advisor to Fix California. She's a political strategist, one of the best in the entire land, our great United States of America. And President Trump, she's catching his eye. He's sharing a lot of her content on Truth Social. So check her out. And where can we find you, Katie, online? So in case people are scrubbing back with the live stream, can find all of your great commentary that's out there in the World Wide Web.
On X, Katie Zacharia. On Instagram, Katie Zacharia. And LinkedIn, Katie Zacharia.
Always a joy to have you on the show, Katie Zacharia of the great Golden State of California. We'll see you very soon on the right side of history.
Thank you so much.